I am Debbie Huntsman, and we've got a great show tonight. Thank you to Gulf Coast Bank and Trust Company for their 2024 conference support. Their motto is the bank that cares about you, and they really do. And Bryant is our guest host again tonight. And tell us about yourself in a nutshell.
I first came to working with the National Women's Sailing Association back when we did a series of weekly events with a panel of former and current crew members of Maiden during the pandemic. And Maiden was actually kind of grounded. So we were thinking, how can we inspire people to make sure that Maiden can still be achieving her goals as a boat, as a foundation? And the Maiden Factor actually was planning a circumnavigation now that they're doing. But to get the boat through that period of time, we actually did these weekly events with the National Women's Sailing Association and with Women Who Sail. I was an editor at Wooden Boat Magazine for about 4 years. I have worked for a few different YouTube channels, and now I work for Lowell's Boat Shop, which is the oldest boat building shop in the United States. I'm their content creator, and also have my own channel called From Pine to Palm. I'm a storyteller who finds a way to make a living telling stories about all kinds of boats and the interesting people who are in and around them. So Kate Tannian is programming and interpretation manager at the new Canal Lighthouse Museum and Education Center. She's from St. Louis, where most of the time she spent on the water in an inner tube floating down a river. She was so in awe of the first time she saw the ocean off the coast of Connecticut, their parents had to drag her away from the chilly beach. Kate confessed she has only been on a sailboat twice, and one of those times she was almost knocked on the water by the boom. She loves to kayak, spends most of her time near the water instead of on the water, with her feet firmly on the lighthouse grounds. That said, watching the boats go out is one of her favorite activities at the lighthouse. She especially enjoys watching the regattas. And she says, I can't say I can never tell who is winning. Welcome, Kate, as she shares the story of the New Canal Lighthouse.
Hello. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the New Canal Lighthouse. Okay, so this is the New Canal Lighthouse. Hopefully, if you all are coming down to the conference, you'll get a view of this. This is on Lake Pontchartrain. It's a little bit of a weird place for a lighthouse. When you all visit New Orleans and you come to the lighthouse, the tour starts about 70 million years ago. So we're going to do a little bit of a briefer version of the story right now. The Lighthouse is an education center for an organization called Pontchartrain Conservancy. It's a local environmental research nonprofit that concentrates on water quality and coastal restoration throughout Louisiana. Pontchartrain was the first project of that nonprofit. So when we give the tour, we talk a lot about geology. So it's kind of a long tour. But we're going to talk a little bit about geology, because why is there a lighthouse in this weird place for a lighthouse? You can see here the Birdfoot Delta at the end of the Mississippi River. That yellow arrow is pointing toward where the lighthouse is. So the lighthouse is in a weird place for the same reason New Orleans is in a weird place. It's all about shipping. So navigating up through the mouth of the Mississippi River, even nowadays, is considered a very difficult maritime task. But back in the day, when they were trying to do it on sail without any sonar, and the river was still unharnessed at this point, so there were shoals, hidden shoals just beneath the surface of the water that would shift daily. So ships would run aground all over the place. So Iberville and his brother Bienville, their last name was Lemoyne. Iberville and Bienville were two explorers that were living in Canada at the time, and France contacted them and asked them to try and make their way down to what we now call the Gulf of Mexico to see if they could find a way into the Mississippi River without having to go through the mouth of the river because they were so tired of losing their ships all the time. Iberville came down first, and he reached out to a couple of folks from the Aco-Ellipsa tribe and said, do you guys know a way, when you are fishing, how do you get from the Gulf of Mexico into the Mississippi River? And they said, we don't go through the mouth of the Mississippi. We're not crazy. What we do is we go into the Gulf of Mexico and we sail into Lake Borgne, which is right here. And then we sail down a tiny pass called the Wrigley's. It's a little tiny tidal pass into Lake Pontchartrain, and then down a bayou off Lake Pontchartrain called Bayou St. John. Bayou St. John would take them about halfway to the Mississippi River. So Bayou St. John, you can see there in purple. In 1794, they dug a man-made canal off that called the Carondelet Canal, which went to Basin Street. I don't know if there are any jazz fans here. Basin Street is the birthplace of jazz, Basin Street blues. It's called Basin Street because it was the turning basin for that shipping canal. So we get to 1803, we have the Louisiana Purchase. Americans start pouring into town. The French living here at the time, not happy about this, really, really annoyed by it, actually. And so they would kind of mess with the Americans who wanted to use their shipping canal. Now, keep in mind, everybody's on sail still at this point. So you don't just sail down a shipping canal. You sail in, you take your sails down, you throw lines ashore, and then you get pulled down the shipping canal by oxen or mules or, you know, whatever beast or burden that you have. So what the French would do is they kind of hold the Americans off. They'd be like, we're not ready for you yet. A little busy, not quite ready for you yet. And then finally, toward the end of the day, they'd be like, okay, it's your turn, sail on in. So they'd sail into the shipping canal, take their sails down, and the French would send all their canal workers home. So there was no one to pull the ship down the shipping canal. These are very narrow, very shallow canals. People would just walk to the boat and loot it. And in 1832, Americans had finally had enough, and they said, fine, we will dig our own canal. So they started digging the New Basin Canal. So that one you'll see on this slide in maroon. And so that went all the way down to around where the Superdome is now. So it was about a 6-mile long shipping canal. Now that happened to coincide with a major potato famine in Ireland. So there were a lot of Irish moving to the United States. So the canal company sent representatives to Ireland, and they said, move to New Orleans, we will pay you $1 a day to dig this canal by hand. That was much better than starving to death. A lot of folks moved to New Orleans. What the canal company didn't tell these guys is that we were not only in the middle of a yellow fever epidemic, we were also in the middle of a cholera epidemic. And so the workers died by the thousands. It's estimated, the rumor is that between 8,000 and 10,000 workers died digging the New Basin Canal. Francis D. Gott got awarded $4,500 to move to build the first lighthouse to mark the New Basin Canal. So the first one was just a cypress tower, more of a standard tower-shaped lighthouse. And they learned really quickly that you can't put a tower on a wetland. And so the thing fell over pretty much immediately. There's lots of notes about how in the 1840s, everybody was complaining, all of the sailors were complaining that all of the lighthouses in New Orleans were pretty much worthless because they were all the traditional tower and they were all just falling right over. In 1855, they built a little bit of a sturdier one. They built a single-story lighthouse, and that might have lasted till today. But in 1879, along came the Southern Yacht Club, which this is actually the second building that they built in their current location. It was beautiful. It was a gorgeous building, but it was also 2 stories tall, and it blocked the light from that single-story lighthouse. So again, they decided to redesign the whole thing. They were like, fine, we will take it down. So they took that one down. In 1890, they built the wedding cake style structure. So you see that wedding cake style lighthouse, it has a wider footprint, which does a lot better on our mucky, spongy ground that we have in Louisiana. Think of New Orleans as one of the oldest cities in the United States, and architecturally speaking, that's true. Geologically speaking, it's one of the youngest places on Earth. And because of that, our ground hasn't had time to solidify. And so there's no, the bedrock here is very, very deep. Lake Pontchartrain has this silty ground, which is why when you come sail on it, you're going to see it's kind of got a brownish tint. It's all of that new silt that's come down from the rivers. The 1890 lighthouse lasted a pretty long time, lasted over 100 years, until we got to August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina didn't actually take it down, but it picked it up and it dropped it. Until then, it was a Coast Guard station, though the Coast Guard had moved to their new location in 2002. So they were mostly just using it for storage. And we were already in talks with them to take it over for our education center. But, you know, that's a lot of paperwork. So it was taking a little while. So we weren't able to get back in after the storm to secure it. Unfortunately, we got hit again 29 days after Katrina with another hurricane called Hurricane Rita. Hurricane Rita did a little bit more damage to us, put it on a little bit more of a tilt. The trouble was, in November of that same year, there was just a little winter storm. Any other year, it wouldn't have been anything. But because all the buildings were so weakened from Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita, that it just destroyed everything. You can see actually that little behind the lighthouse, that burned out building, that's the Southern Yacht Club. So Southern Yacht Club did catch fire and burn to the ground during Hurricane Katrina as well, thanks to a gas leak. When you come see it, you'll see a beautiful brand new building that does not look like it was built for the second oldest yacht club in the United States. This is what the winter storm did. We finally lost our cupola. It tumbled to the ground and shattered. So we started raising money. Obviously, after Hurricane Katrina and Rita, there were more important things than putting together a lighthouse. In 2013, we were finally able to put it back together again. We raised it to the highest point of storm surge off Lake Pontchartrain during Hurricane Katrina. So where the bottom of that lighthouse is right now, that's where the top of the lake was during that storm. It was a 19-foot storm surge. Off the coast of the state of Mississippi, it was a 26-foot storm surge. I'm guessing some folks live inland. If you picture a hurricane, like a satellite image of a hurricane, they're 40 miles long, 50, 60 miles long. These are huge storms. So the storm surge occurs under that storm. As those winds are spinning, they are dropping all kinds of water and they're pushing the waves beneath and stacking that wave energy beneath it. But they're also doing another thing. They're pulling the air up beneath the storm and they're lessening the atmospheric pressure beneath that storm. And so that the sea rises. And so you're not thinking of, it's not so much like a tidal wave. A storm surge is the size of a hurricane traveling with the hurricane. So imagine 26 feet of water, the size of a hurricane. That's the kind of thing that regularly hits our lighthouse. So we made a few adjustments. We were able to use about 50% of the original material in rebuilding it, but we made a couple changes just so it'll stay around for another 100 years. The stairs are breakaway now. We've been hit with several hurricanes since and several tropical storms. It was Tropical Storm that actually did us the most damage, Tropical Storm Cindy, but we rebuilt that lighthouse once. We've rebuilt those stairs now 4 times, but it just keeps standing. It comes on every night. It's a lot easier to be a lighthouse keeper than it used to be. It's on photosensitive cells, so we're not up there turning on and off the light. Nobody's changing any oil. Nobody's trimming any wicks. It just comes on. It is a Fresnel lens for lighthouse buffs. It's a third order Fresnel lens. It goes about 9 miles. We have the original Fresnel lens that Ed Huntsman sounds like found in the museum itself. Now we use it again as our education center. So we teach about water quality. We show people how to clean the stormwater as it's going into the storm drains here. The storm drains here pump directly into Lake Pontchartrain. So when we have the heavy rains, the storms, the hurricanes, etc., that's untreated water. So any runoff from the city is going directly into the lake. So we do a few different things here. We test the water through the Pontchartrain Basin in 60 different spots. We post our water quality results on an app called Lake and Coast, so people can know what's happening, whether it's safe to get in the water, whether it's safe to swim. We also have a native plant program where we encourage folks to plant bioswales and rain gardens to help filter and bioremediate that water before it gets into those storm drains and gets out to the lake. And we do coastal restoration. We planted over 100,000 trees throughout the wetlands, because for every 2.7 miles of wetlands, it reduces storm surge by a foot. So if we'd had all the wetlands that were here when Iberville decided where to stick New Orleans in the first place, during Hurricane Katrina, it would have reduced that storm surge by 10 feet. So that would have been a much different result. So one more thing I want to tell you is about Madge Norvell. She's our most famous lighthouse keeper. She was the second lighthouse keeper to keep this lighthouse. And there are a lot of lighthouse stories, or a lot of good stories about Madge. But my favorite is there was a storm one night. There used to be a Navy base about 6-7 miles away from the lighthouse. She saw a plane take off. So she jumped into a rowboat, rowed out into the night, into the storm, pulled out the pilot, and saved his life. Now, it's a rowboat. That lake, you'll get 4 or 5 foot swells in a storm easily. Like she was constantly going out and pulling people out, saving people's lives. Madge is sort of our spirit at the lighthouse. Come visit us at the lighthouse.